And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery. And I fucked it up already. This is not the monastery. This is the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me as always is my good brother here in the temple, the man of distorted illuminations, good brother Monarch.
So I have determined one of my favorite just anime tropes is when they will take two guys, make them as gay as possible while still convincing the audience they're straight. I love it. I don't know why.
Meanwhile, Silver Age Batman and Robin is looking at it and laughing.
I think Rusty Bisco has it beat.
Maybe.
But that's another story.
Maybe. So we are finally back after a bit of a delay due to some seasonal whiplash that I was dealing with last week. Last week because the week before last we did night, and then I was just completely disoriented, just complete out of it. I was in no condition to do the stream last week.
It happens to the best of us.
And I should note I have had some back and forth with the developers of Night, mostly through Facebook. I'm trying to see if I can get an interview out of it, but I'm not. But there is going to be one teensy tiny problem: language barrier. And while I'm no stranger to working with people for whom English is their their second or third language, it does take a bit of coaxing sometimes. Not slamming anybody about it, it's just a fact. But Cursebrand is one that I've wanted to do for a fair bit. First off, as far as what grade I'd give it, the game is free, so you have no excuse, and I will hear no excuse to not at least read the damn thing. And if you can't read, find somebody to read for you, or use a text-to-speech app. If you can't hear, there's captioning for text-to-speech apps. Like I said, no excuses. But and obviously, I've interviewed the developer of it, Ashram Kane, in the past regarding the Prometheum system. He's probably going to have a lot more eyes on him once the TTRPG adaptation of Ys and Trails of Cold Steel come out. Much in the same way that there's been a lot more eyes on Lion Wing due to the Shin Megami Tensei RPG in the works. And I do have to note, when it comes to their relationship with Nihon Falcom, that is them making a game. It's not them localizing. That's something that that Lion Wing does. But Cursebrand Chronicles is one of the two primary games out right now that utilize their Prometheum engine, an engine that that was developed when they decided to move away from 5e, because up until that point their big thing was Advent Horizon, which was a space opera using 5e. More space opera, not space fantasy, I should note. But they wanted to move away from it, and it wasn't because of the OGL thing, although that certainly didn't hurt. It was more due to the fact that there was a series of frustrations that they were dealing with when it came to 5e and when it came to running 5e, and all of the assumptions that it makes because of the whole D&D players living in a bubble kind of thinking. And I know some might say that that Pathfinder players don't live in a bubble. Bullshit. Yes, they do. Anybody who's in that D20 sphere is largely living in a bubble. Not everybody, but a large enough amount of them are. And because of that, they don't quite know how to relate to the new player experience. Because they assume everybody knows how this kind of thing works. Because that's what they've been told by everybody.
Now, that said, for Cursebrand itself, I think this is going to be another one where I've not really touched on a game like this before. The introduction describes it as a Magitech diesel punk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to expect as we go through this.
Now, this runs at about 193 pages. And I will note that art is going to be on the sparse side. It is a lot of character art, some environment art, but a lot of it in black and white. The one thing I will note against it is no bookmarks on the PDF, and this is the most recent PDF that's on Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah, that's slightly frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, it's free, so I'm not gonna hold too much against it for that. Just a little.
I could. I'd just look stupid doing it. But we will start with the introduction. Obviously, the first two paragraphs in introduction are kind of doing the what a role-playing game is kind of thing. So I think I think before I hand it off to you, let's start off with the preface, which is going to be on page 7, Monarch.
Oh, when you said before you handed it out to me, I thought you were planning to read that bit. I'm
No,
at the preface now.
no, I've talked enough. I'll let you talk
Yeah.
now.
So, in the early 19th century, the reparations demanded of the kingdom of Arden by the great nations following the Attican War drove a severe economic imbalance into a severe economic depression. It should be no surprise that the kingdom of Arden would fall victim to the violent rhetoric of their young prince. In a few short years, the crown transformed the failing state into a technological superpower. Arden as a nation with a rich history of industry and sciences and the birthplace of modern nuclear physics. As such, they were the first to enrich and develop weapons-grade nuclear material. Fearing the devastating power of atomic weaponry in the hands of the would-be Empire of Arden, the enemies of the Imperial Alliance rushed to create their bombs first. In hopes that the threat of total annihilation would be the end war, the Democratic Union, led by Greater Ridmar, used their atomic arsenal against Arden. Yet the Ardenian crown simply responded in kind. From End of War by Professor Ishan Zahn. Continues on. Oh, sorry, what was that?
I was about to say you might just
Yeah.
keep going.
The imperialistic aggression escalated to atomic war. Fueling the conflict was the energy known as mana, and the refined form of dithesite. I'm going to assume that's dithesite. But the refined form of dithesite known as lens, both used to unleash a devastating power, magic. In the aftermath of the war, the nightmare birthed by the bombs was realized. Miasma. Cursed clouds that brought not only death, but undead horrors. In the face of a world ruined, the remaining nations joined forces to create the Allied Protection Operations Command to defend against the horrors and contain the miasma. In order to survive, humanity was forced to take refuge in ever-expanding walled supercities. Many of these nation-states under the APOC's authoritarian rule. As the ashes settled, the wild frontier was reclaimed by nature. 25 years have passed since the bombs fell. Into the ruined world, a new breed has emerged able to wield power of the tainted miasma, yet are not consumed by it. Those who bear the mark of corruption. The Cursebrand.
Yep. So then it goes into playing the games, where it talks about the Prometheum system. Setting the cast, which is self-explanatory. Setting the stage, also self-explanatory. Then action, i.e. the actions, and then we get to using dice. At the nucleus of the Prometheum system are a few simple concepts. Action rolls for how you resolve contests, such as hitting or defending in combat. Effect rolls for determining outcomes, including how much damage you deal should you strike an enemy with a weapon. And dice rank for establishing what dice you use when you make an action or effect roll. Throughout the text, you'll see dice types abbreviated as D20, D12, D10, D8, D6, and D4. Then going into the types of die. So this isn't a case where it's just D20. We're using the whole gamut. So first we have action rolls, which are 1d20 plus any bonus dice. Not modifiers, bonus dice. Your objective is to roll higher than the victory sum, or VS, basically the DC, set by the GM. If you take an action that affects another creature, it is usually entitled to a reaction, such as using defense to dodge or deflect an attack, or using resistance to overcome a spell or technique. Most actions that are challenging will be versus 15 to 20. Difficult tasks will hover in the versus 25 to 35 range, whereas a difficult or life or death challenge will be over 40 or even high as 50. Obviously, GM's call on that. Then we have effects, i.e. an effect roll. Then bonus dice. Anytime you'd receive a bonus to a roll, whether it's an action or effect roll, you receive additional die to roll. Your ability scores, skills, and talents will give bonus dice on various action and effect rolls. Situations might provide you bonus dice. Bonus dice are usually heroic dice, but wounds, injuries, and other conditions can reduce their rank. And then we have the die rank, and this is going to be important throughout. Die ranks are basically the rank for the die size, going from feeble D4, poor D6, ordinary D8, heroic D10, epic D12, legendary D20, and mythic D100.
Now, one thing I'm presuming at this point, again, a bit of a presumption, you're going to be rolling a decent number of dice, most likely, once you start getting up to the higher ends of this game.
It is very clear that you're going to be rolling a fair few dice, period. Yeah. It's going to be leaning more into rolling dice as your bonus instead of static numbers.
Yeah, like, I'm presuming Mythic isn't going to come up too often, considering 50 is the high end.
Mm-hmm.
And a D100, that's the average roll, effectively.
Mm-hmm. But with Critical Role, whenever you roll the maximum number on any bonus dice, the dice burst. This is basically exploding dice. And I know some people really don't like exploding dice. They are free to be wrong. Because, well, I do. But then we have chances and challenges. There are several instances where the situation changes the outcome of an action, as reflected by chances, charges, and challenges. Chances. You'll often find you are rolling your action dice plus 2 or 3 bonus dice. In a situation like this, a versus 20 can seem trivial. As a player, you have the option to gamble with your success, playing a game of all or nothing by taking one or more chances on an action. For each chance you take, you increase the VS of the action by 10, but increase the rank of the outcome or effect roll. This is a charge. For example, while attacking an enemy, you could attempt to decapitate them in one blow, taking 2 chances to increase your bonus dice on damage from heroic to legendary, but that task is much more difficult and the VS is increased by 20. Then we have challenges. When you're faced with a situation that hampers your ability, you may receive challenges. Each challenge reduces the rank of your bonus dice on an action by 1 rank. The most common form of challenge is being wounded, which affects all actions you take. Normally, a challenge is specific and situational. The GM might rule that attacking with a melee weapon underwater provokes 2 challenges to your attack and damage rolls, but firing a bow does not. And then the last thing we have is precedence and priority. This is basically a order of operations thing that the whole specific beats general rule, which anybody who's played any sort of tabletop game, whether it be board games, whether it be card games, whether it be war games, whether it be miniatures, whether it be role-playing games, you should be familiar in one form or another with specific beats general. I do remember some card games when I was growing up calling this the golden rule. Like in card games, it would say if a card's effects contradict a core rule, the card's effects win.
Now, I am hoping somewhere along the way we're going to see some more examples of just challenges and what would likely be appropriate numbers to assign.
Hmm.
But as a system, I kind of like that.
I do like that they have a better version of the raise system that was in L5R. You know, the whole boost the difficulty to get something better out of it. In this case, you're boosting both the die and the difficulty.
Yeah.
Which, which is what balances out the fact that this is clearly using die values instead of static numbers. If it was using static numbers, then that could get broken really easily. But that's not the case. Like just because you have, say, a d20 and you're rolling 3d8 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a good roll out of those 3d8.
Very much agreed. But next we'll get on to actually building characters.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm glancing over a world of adventure. I'm thinking we probably don't need to worry about reading this beginning bit.
I think you should start at
Yes.
understanding characters.
Understanding characters, yes. So all characters are composed of the same basic blocks. These values and statistics will help you resolve actions in your character's capabilities. Species. Creation is filled with intelligent life. Your species will dictate most of your initial characteristics, including your ability scores and traits. There are 3 categories of species: mortal, arcane, and eldritch. In the Cursebrand Chronicles, characters are human, though some variations exist. Then we get background, class, temperament, ability scores, your guard. So this is just kind of a list of all the stuff you'll find on your character sheet. From imagination to action, character creation can be broken down into 6 discrete sets. First, select your background or race, then roll ability scores, select your class, spend skill points, calculate final traits, fill in miscellaneous information. As you advance by earning experience points, you'll gain levels by accomplishing deeds, which earn additional skill points to spend upgrading your skill trees and purchasing talents. While it's a simple and straightforward process, it can take time given the number of options available. In addition to choosing a race and class, you get to tailor your capabilities through skills and talents, which can be a time-consuming yet rewarding process. So I like it's kind of setting up right off that it's not going to be as quick as maybe some systems, but it's giving you that expectation out the gate. So selecting a background, as we can all probably attest, our culture and upbringing have significant impact on our development as a person. The character you craft for a game is also formed. This is called your background. While there are potentially infinite circumstances to your formative years, they can be broken down into socioeconomic and cultural distinctions. They'll dictate what dice and how many you roll for ability scores, as well as your starting traits such as health, durability, vigor, and mana. Next, roll ability scores. Your species and background will dictate what you roll for ability scores. There are 9 ability scores in the Promethean system, being strength, agility, stamina, speed, soul, empathy, memory, reason, and resolve. Corruption is decided by your choice of Cursebrand. When you are rolling your ability scores, if you roll maximum value on 1 or more of your dice, you are entitled to roll 1 more dice of the same type and add it on. This is called a critical ability score. For example, 3d8 for your strength score and you rolled an 843, you would roll an additional d8. Additional max rolls aren't going to add more. So an ability score of 15 or higher will give you bonus dice to roll on action checks and resistance checks related to that ability score. Many traits are derived directly from your ability scores as well. Then select a Cursebrand. Once you have your background and core ability scores, you must select your curse brand and roll your corruption score. Each brand will grant you access to an elite skill tree and determine what you roll for corruption. If you choose to advance your curse brand with skill points, you will find your corruption score grows rapidly. As do the maledictions corruptions inflict upon you. There are 9 known curse brands. However, only the Sangmont Noble may select the Dragon brand, which will be presented in a future title. Then you
That
select your
future title has not come out yet.
So select a class. Your character class represents a suit of training and abilities. Each class provides a selection of innate talents, elite skill trees, a set number of skill points, and equipment. While you cannot change your initial class, you might learn talents and skill trees from other classes as you advance in levels, provided you have the opportunity. Classes are either vocational, augmentation, or ancestral, depending on the types of characteristics and requirements. And purchase skills and talents. In addition to the talents made available to you from your class, you will also have an amount of skill points to spend on purchasing skills and talents from your class's elite skill trees, the universal core skill trees, and general talents. Core skill trees include combat skills, academic skills, and practical skills. All characters may upgrade their core skills through skill points. As a first level character, you may only purchase rank 1 skill bonuses and talents. You cannot save up or retain any of your skill points to spend later. Your initial skill points must all be spent on skills and talents before you play.
Mm-hmm.
Calculate traits. Traits refer to your derived values, health, durability, vigor, and mana. Your class, race, and skills will affect your ability scores and traits. Many skill trees and talents have an option to increase an ability score, health, durability, vigor, mana, or number of actions through skill points as well. Once you have your final ability scores, calculate your final traits. Then you go for equipment and miscellaneous items, your story, and that's just the general rundown of making the characters, the steps you'll follow.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I like it does do a lot, as I mentioned earlier, to set your expectations for what you're doing. And I know a lot of people just assume this sometimes, but I don't think we've seen it specified that, yes, you have to spend your points. You can't just sit on them for the level.
Which
It's nice to have that little clarification.
Yeah, I'm glad for that because so often we've seen players who have some sort of analysis paralysis about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or you have cases where they're planning out their advancement several sessions in advance. I know that kind of thing is going to happen, but I think there's ways to mitigate it so that it doesn't feel like you've already decided how your character is going to be built before your character even starts. That's always been the problem I have with it.
That said, I imagine we're going to be looking over the ability scores when we get to them, because this is not your standard set of ability scores.
We will.
Yeah.
Um.
But that'll be when we actually get there.
Yeah. The other thing I will note is that this game doubles down on skill trees.
Yep. Skill trees from the curse brands, skill trees from your classes.
When I say skill trees, I mean something more akin to talent trees you would see in Diablo, which I know some people are going to over the idea of a TTRPG taking notes from video games. Oh, you're making it feel like a video game. Get fucked. Get fucked and go make love to your Westmarch hex crawl. Okay, I kid. But you know who you are, the the type of person who thinks I should only be running a poor man's Tolkien till the end of time, or a poor man's Lieber. I'm never gonna stop picking on that line of thinking. Or rather, I should say, I'll stop picking on that line of thinking when it stops being relevant. But the the base setup that we've got here, I'd say is pretty good. Now I should note there are more traditional skills, but when it comes to how advancement works, this is going to be a game that's going to lean heavily into into skill trees. And actually, Diablo isn't the best example. I suppose a better example would be, I don't know, Mass Effect 1 to an extent. No, that's still kind of a reach. The point is that the advancement trees aren't exactly sprawling. And if anything, they're pretty simple since they go left to right. That being said, this was a bit of a short one. Um, in addition to the genre settings that you mentioned earlier, maybe I should have put in post apocalypse in this, because that's
Yeah.
basically what we're dealing with. This is not a post apocalypse. Let me make that clear. This is a post apocalypse.
Yeah.
And I know some are like, what's the difference? The difference is time and scale. In a post apocalypse, the bombs have dropped, the world's gone to shit, and everybody's just trying to survive. A
Now
post
we've had enough
apocalypse.
time to actually set up society again. Not perfect, but we're on that track now.
It's to the point where new societies have taken root and are at some kind of level of recovery or some kind of past tech level. And this is and this is the key difference. This is why something like, say, Fragged Empire is a post apocalypse, um, where humanity's been long since dead, and now other races have taken root. Same with the Genesis. As far as like video game and more weeb examples of post apocalypse, um, to a certain extent, I could argue the original Nier. Like, you have whole cultures that have been propped up. And as far as anime goes, I know somebody might say Fist of the North Star or Hokuto no Ken, but the bomb dropping is too recent for that. I'm pretty sure there is an anime that would count as post apocalypse. I'm just
I'm
struggling
blanking
with,
on it too.
yeah. Law of
It's gonna be
averages
one as soon as we finish this. We're gonna remember one.
probably. And I might be biased by saying this, but of course Sword World most certainly counts as a post apocalypse multiple times over. Every age in that setting, or at least with the 2.5, we're only just getting proper translations for a good amount of 2.0 stuff, and by recent I mean as recent as this week. But I think we're off to a very promising start. Um,
Again,
does
I'm
the
hoping we're gonna see better or some more examples in relation to things like challenges, but
um,
time will tell.
I know I bring this up a lot, but I think the question of, is this as bad as Valhalla? No.
I think that's the safe assumption for anything we're going to be talking about.
right now,
And once it's not the case, that's when we can
yeah,
bring up Valhalla again.
right now the Valhalla adventure game is at the top as far as the worst TTRPG that I have covered in a full-on Valley of the Judged season. There's been some bad or questionable one, and as far as
Certainly the worst one you've done with me.
I can't think of one that was bad. I know some might say that Level Up, given how much I've roasted that over the years, was the worst one that I did with Zan. No, Level Up wasn't that level of bad. It was just missed potential. And in regards to in regards to some of the others, I don't think.
I mean, were there positive things you could say about all those other ones? If so,
Yeah.
they beat out Valhalla.
Well, let me see. There, I already mentioned Level Up. Heavens and Heresies was not shit, even though that coverage is significantly out of date. Um, Magi Knights was not shit. Emberwind, not shit. Otherworlds, I had some disagreements with certain aspects, but that's about it. Convictor Drive was really fucking good. Faith, Faith is very good. Planet Bound, I'd has no. Um, Brass and Steel, not. I wouldn't. I'd say that was more of, just stopping short of the finish line. So the problem
I
that
mean, I still really like Brass and Steel from
well,
reading over it, but
now Brass and Steel, the problem I think we had was just not having much in the way of art. Like mechanically, it
yeah,
was great. It's just
yeah,
some concepts really needed art, like
yeah,
especially everything
fair.
revolving around the dreaming.
Yeah.
Um, Sufficiently Advanced. I don't think Sufficiently Advanced is a bad game. I just think it's a game with a high floor.
I'd never play it, but I could see why someone would want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say any of that about Valhalla.
Yeah. Um, Shattered. Shattered was good.
I mean, that's been my favorite one so far.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously
And
better.
well, Veil of the Void, like I said, I don't play shit games, and I'm going to be playing Veil of the Void this weekend.
But yeah, all that said, I'm looking forward to it. This one's got me interested.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen the Promethean system at all before, so this will be fun. I'm not
It'll
sure how
def-
they're going to handle classes, but
um, I know how they're gonna handle classes, and it is going to be a different affair than what one might be used to. Like I said, this is a project that I think if you're someone who has more of a background in quote unquote old school thinking, you're gonna have issues here. If you're somebody who comes from a more indie or video game background, you're gonna have a much easier time. And I will write a musing about this one of these days, but weebs and video gamers are my easiest students to work with. I think it's also the reason why I've been so fascinated with the world of Japanese tabletop. Because a lot of the things that people consider tradition with TTRPGs just doesn't apply there. Meaning designers don't feel like they have to do things in order to fit in. Well, except for the D6 thing, but even that's starting to even the dominance of D6 based mechanics is starting to lose its grip. The only reason it had it is because that was the easiest kind of die to get in Japan for the longest time, especially outside of the major cities. But that is a story for another night. Um, I will be back here, of course, tomorrow, continuing the coverage of Gods of Metal Ragnarok with Zan. And of course, I'm gonna be before I do Cloister on Saturday. I'm gonna be hopping on your channel, Monarch, to go through our adventures.
Yes. It is finally time to talk Nabashin, the other Watanabe.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a fun one.
Are you gonna end up doing that wearing a comically large afro?
I mean, if I still had a comically large afro to wear, I probably would. But that wig kind of got ruined.
Sadness.
It is.
But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.